It's an amazing scripture passage. I loved reading that one. How many of you exercise every day? How many of you exercise 4 times a day? Oh, okay. Anybody in here read a book every day? Show of hands if we read a book every day. Anybody in here eat every day? Okay, all right. Universal hands there. How many of you work every day? All right. How many of you listen to music every day? How many of you listen to music several times a day? Yeah. It's interesting. You know, as I think about it, and I think about this idea of the gift of music, we're thinking about the series, the gifts we have to receive. I think about the fact that music is probably one of the things we do the most. Perhaps not singing, perhaps it is singing internally within our minds, perhaps it is singing internally with our emotions, or perhaps it's singing externally. How many of you sing in the shower? Okay, some of you aren't admitting it. I know more if you do that. Or in the car. So singing, music, listening to music, playing, it's a part of our lives, no matter who we are. Almost all of us at some point, even if I don't have it on at the office, somehow there's always something kind of going in my head every now and then. And sometimes there's those little earworms that you can't even get the song out of your head. My wife's favorite, of course, is, and I'm sorry for this, but here it comes. I want a hippopotamus for Christmas. A hippopotamus, only a hippopotamus will do. Now you're cursed, you can't get it out of your head. Okay, so you're going to be thinking that all the rest of the week. Thank you very much. So I grew up with all this music in my family, which I've talked about before. My grandmother's opera. Al factonzo agita largo, la 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 la. How many of you remember that? Thanks to Bugs Bunny, right? Yeah, Marriage of Figaro. Or if you were my uncle, after I'd have to go to opera and listen to the opera because my grandmother would make us go on Saturdays to listen. She was an opera singer. My uncle would have the songs, let's see. That's all right, you can hear it without this. Once two strangers climbed old Rocky Top looking for a moonshine still. The strangers ain't come down old Rocky Top, I reckon they never will. And I'd be asking my brother, why won't they come back down? And then, of course, there's this one. In-a-gata-da-vida, honey. Don't you know that I love you, darling? So I got to I listened to Iron Butterfly when I'd sneak off to my friend David's house. And then, of course, I'd have all this mixture that I grew up with. This wonderful writer and sort of strange, funny character from the late 19th century. His name was Savage, Walter Savage Landon, and he was a poet, but also an author and a composer. And he wrote this. One of the most famous quotes that you see anywhere on posters. It's inscribed. It's embroidered into pillows. Music is God's great gift to humanity, the only art of heaven given to earth, the only art of earth we take to heaven. And yet, the only thing that we read so much in the Scripture, in the Bible, about music tends to be it's either in celebration or it's in lament or it's on the way out. As this morning's text, it's back in. Everything is singing again. We have this notion of music that's inbred within us, and yet it's something that we take for granted. And as far as the sacred aspect of it, there's not a whole lot of mention of it biblically. As teenagers, I didn't like my grandmother's opera. I saw it as much torture as gift. My grandmother dismissed my uncle's bluegrass as backwards washboard scratching. But I know now, like maybe you did, maybe you spent a period of your time where you literally avoided your parents' music at all costs. But now you're coming back. Now you're remembering. Now you're listening. What is that? What is that about our lives that as we make our way through time, some of that old music suddenly has an appeal to us again? What is it about music that doesn't speak to us so much in lyric or even in melody as it does in emotion, as it does in connection? I think we get to that place where we suddenly realize that music has more to do with the inner landscape of our lives than it has to do with whether or not the theme is about joy or longing or sadness. There's this wonderful word called enchant. Some of you know this word, enchanting. It comes from an interesting Latin root word, which is incantare. Incantare means to sing against or to sing into. The most familiar uses of the word is like incantation or chanting or almost even like a spell. In some sense, music casts spells on us, but in another sense, we participate in music. We sing, we create music as a way of moving against the darkness, perhaps, moving against suffering or pain or sorrow. And at the same time, we sanctify moments with music. I think we've probably been using that in our lives since the beginning of time. If you think about our most ancient ancestors, what did they do when they wanted crops? They stood in a circle, danced and sang. What do people do when they were celebrating a new victory over a battle? They danced and sang. What do we do when we gather around the loss of a loved one? We sing. At football games, we celebrate victories or we rally the teams with song. The same idea of incantare is present in the text this morning, but I want you to think about what's going on here because it's interesting as this image is. We've been seeing these images. I was telling Tim Brewster, our senior pastor, last week we met. I said, Tim, we're reading 3 or 4 different passages in Isaiah, but they're all saying the same thing. And he says, yeah, I know, it's kind of hard to preach the same thing every Sunday because, I didn't really think about that when we picked out the passages. They're all about this new vision. They're all about this new reality, new Jerusalem, new kingdom, new hope. It's this whole, last week it was the peaceable kingdom. And every time we read this, it's sort of like the unattainable. It's like we're not there yet. So here we have the desert and the dry land will be glad. The wilderness will rejoice and blossom like the crocus. They will burst into bloom and rejoice with joy and singing. Even fools will not be able to get lost on the highway of this new reality of joy. Everything will come to life in that day. This whole image, this idea of this, what once was dead is now coming alive. It's the play back and forth that we see all throughout Scripture. And if you go back a few years to Amos, prophet Amos, who was just a little bit older than Isaiah, who prophesied in the same region. Well, actually, he was kind of from the south, but he was talking about northern kingdom of Israel. If you go back, he has just the opposite because you see there, at that point, the kings had gotten a little lax. The people had gotten a little bit laid back. And they were sort of getting a little more greedy, and they were thinking more about themselves. And so Amos comes in and says, all right, now your harps are going to sound like weeping, and now your songs are going to sound like screaming. So it's a whole different reality. And then Isaiah comes back in and says, now that you're back on track, there's a future that's possible. Stay on track. The whole thing about the Bible, I'm assuming you've read it from beginning to end, right? Probably a couple of times, right? I had to do it in seminary, so I have that excuse, But if you read it through, you have to get back from it, right? If you read the whole thing through and you step away from it, it's pretty simple. It's saying just a couple of things. It's saying basically life is about justice or injustice. Life is about compassion or greed. It's pretty much all there is to it. When things are going right, when you're being compassionate, when you're showing justice, when you're out concerned about justice, things start to go right. This vision of the future starts to come into place. The songs start to sing about and celebrate this idea of this new life. But when you start getting a little focused, a little self-focused, a little carried away, a little less concerned about folks around you, a little more involved in the injustice of the reality around us, then things start to fall apart. Well, now this is a vision. This is a statement. It's a sacred kind of statement that happens with prophets who come out and decry against what's going on. But there's something else underneath that scientists have already figured out for a long time, that we're discovering in quantum physics too. And that is the reality that we're all connected. That is the reality that everything is interconnected. When we talk about dry land singing and bursting forth, we're speaking about life itself suddenly recognizing something. I was just one second here. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Lost my point here. Just a minute. Band, come on up here. This is why I changed it up this morning because I realized I need the band to come up here and sing their song before I finish the sermon. So, band, come on up here while I'm singing about this. So, this back and forth nature that we see in the Bible, I don't know. It happens we used to joke with Charles when he was here because Charles loved to write songs that sort of talked about the reality that we find ourselves in, which is somewhat of In the Bleak Midwinter, right? And the Bleak Midwinter sort of has a little bit of that tone. Things are kind of bleak, and yet there's this hope. I heard the bells on Christmas Day. That has that same notion. Things are not good. We have the same sort of thing going back and forth here between Amos and Isaiah. And then we have these Christmas songs that, as we used to joke with Charles, we'd call them bloody Christmas songs because it was always the reality of what we live in. We sing these songs of hope. We sing these songs that in some way seem a little bit gratuitous or superficial in that they keep echoing sort of a sentiment, peace on earth, goodwill towards men, but they fail to get underneath that sentiment. And so this morning we have another one of those songs that sort of plays with that, and I want them to offer that now before I finish up.
Okay. Comes the time for Christmas, and I really have to ask if this is feeling merry. How much longer must it last? Wish one horse open sleigh would come and carry me away, but I've been waiting here all day. One just hasn't come my way. Now excuse me if I'm not being reverent. I was hoping for a miracle to hold me, wash me, save me from my righteous doubt. As I watch helpless, as everybody sings, if it's Hanukkah or Kwanzaa, solstice, harvest, or December 25th, peace on earth to everyone, and abundance to everyone you're with. La 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 la. Comes a time for Christmas, and as you raise your Yuletide flask, it's like this feeling that you carry, as if from every Christmas past. It's as if each year it grows. It's like you feel it in your toes, and on your careful goes, harvesting love from all your woes. I want to buy into the benevolence. I was hoping for a miracle to hold me, wash me, make me know what it's about. As the longing in me makes me want to sing Noel or Navidad. Season celebration or just the end of the year. Christmas can't mean anything, and I mean to keep its hope forever near. La 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 la. As if the cold, frozen soul was warmed to love by love's own hand. So goes the prayer for each day, for peace on earth, goodwill to men. At 20 below, the winter storm it billows, but the fire is so warm inside, and the children, while nestled in their pillows, dream of St. Nicholas's ride, and how the next day they get up and they will play in the divine Christmas snow, and together we'll celebrate forever in defiance of the winds that blow. My God in heaven, I feel just like I'm 7, and the Spirit calls to me as well, as if Christmas had made the winter warmer, made a paradise and what was hell, as if the cold and frozen soul was warmed to love by love's own hand. So goes the prayer for each day, for peace on earth, goodwill to men. It comes the time for Christmas, and I cannot help but ask if this is feeling merry, how much longer must it last? Wish an open sleigh would come and carry me away. I've been waiting here all day. Why just hasn't come my way? It's every 3 children grows. It's like you feel it in your toes, and nodding on your careful blows, harvesting love from all your woes. Oh, it's Hanukkah, or Kwanzaa, solstice, harvest, or December, ton seed-fit peace on earth to everyone, and abundance to everyone you're with. Hark the herald angels sing, glory to the newborn King. Peace on earth and mercy mild, God and sinners reconciled. Hark the herald angels sing, glory to the newborn King. Hark the herald angels sing, glory to the newborn King. Peace on earth and mercy mild, God and sinners reconciled. I wish a one-horse open sleigh would come and carry me away. I'll be waiting through next May until Christmas comes my way.
So this sense that we sing into the despair that we find ourselves in, or that we find the world in. But to do that, I think we have to have this thing that is this notion of harmony. And I want to leave you with this thought of what harmony is. Harmony, we think of harmony as sort of the perfectly matched notes that give us this good feel, this good sound. In fact, technically, what would it be? Lori, if we had a good harmony, we would have the bass chord and the root, the third, and the fifth, right? So, yeah, bum. So let's try that. Bum, 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 bum. Keep it going. Bum, bum, bum. Okay, wait. Take a deep breath. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Okay. All right. You also need a conductor. Okay, I didn't realize. But so that's a perfect sort of harmony or harmonic arrangement, thirds, fifths with the root chord. And yet there's also something that I want to argue, and it's just an idea, but that harmony, like so much we offer in the way of song, can be perfect. And yet, really what it is really great mediocrity. You know? Okay, I want you to hang on to that. Faith can be perfect. I mean, it has all the right stuff, the right ideas, the right beliefs, but it's just really great mediocrity. Relationships can have all the right things, but they can just be really great mediocre relationships. So there's something about harmony that's a whole lot more than simply having the perfect theory, the perfect things in line, all the beliefs, all the ducks, all the musical notes in line. And if you look up the word harmony, you find that its root is actually nautical. It actually comes from shipbuilding. The idea that when the ships were laid in place with one another, they were in harmony. And the reason for that, which is really fascinating, is because they held each other up. If the boards started to warp, the rest of the boards would get out of sync. So the boards had to be in harmony. And that term applies to the hinges that hold the door or the window in the frames. It's not the stickingness of things, it's what holds things in place. Harmony works when you participate in it. If you just simply match the perfect notes, I would suggest that that's when we're starting to experience a little mediocrity. But to make harmony actually work, you have to participate. I remember my grandmother, I used to joke with my grandmother, because my grandmother and grandfather never sat together in church. And I'd always ask my grandmother, why won't you sit together at church? Because they would go to UCC over at University Christian. And she said, well, she had her one reason. My grandfather said it's because he liked hanging out with his golf buddies and, some of the finance committee folks, and he'd go over there and just hang out with those guys. My grandmother says, and she was the opera singer, right? She says it's because your grandfather had only one note, and that's the note he kept bringing to church on Sunday. And she hated she just hated things when they were out of sync, when they were sharp or flat or dissonant. And yet, there's something genuine to dissonance, isn't there? Because in reality, we mostly live our lives in dissonance. We mostly live our lives in disharmony. So my challenge to you as we think about this gift of music, which surrounds us in so many ways, is to realize it's not simply melody and song. That in fact, it's vibrating machines that we work around all the time. It's the cacophony of noises and sounds that we live with every day, in and out of work and in and out of our routine. It's the sounds of birds chirping around us. When the scripture says all of life comes alive, I want to suggest it's already there. But the challenge is we settle for mediocrity and we don't participate as much. So I want to encourage you this week just to spend a little time thinking about the sounds within which you live. Challenge yourself to actually hear deeper, more deeply. Listen to the birds more deeply. Just sit back and listen, not to the monkeys. You listen to the monkeys if you have them. Listen to the noises. Listen to the noises you live within, the buzzing lights in the office. Maybe even try to harmonize with them. Everything's in a frequency. Everything's in a pitch. Maybe listen to one another as I listened to Kim read this morning. I stopped listening to the words. I tried to listen to Kim. That's a challenge. Try to engage more with your ears and begin to experience the music of life in general. Let's stand together as we have a blessing.